Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here, the South Jersey Camera Club folks. What we're going to do today is Abba Shapiro is going to be showing you Luminar 3, which is just a wonderful program, helps you organize your photos and some fantastic editing capabilities with this program. So he's going to take you through that. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. And thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks everybody for joining in. I am Abba Shapiro, and I'm one of the educators at Skylum. And today we're going to walk through Luminar 3. Actually, you're getting a sneak peek at Luminar 3.1. We're releasing an update, slowly rolling it out. I believe it is coming out tomorrow, but don't hold me on that. Might be a couple of days, but it has some nice new features, as well as the existing features. We've actually added some of the things that people have wanted that have been on our roadmap, so I'll go over those as we go through. One of those is the new Axon Ai 2.0 filter, which is designed to really work with skin and people better. So we've really upped our game there, as well as the ability to have more control when we have a mix of JPEG and RAW images in a folder that we're looking through. We can choose to control what we look at. And for those of you who are working on Windows, if you've been using the machine, we've been bringing them up to parity, and Windows is about 95%, a little bit more maybe, equal to the Mac side. I can only think of a couple of things that haven't been fully implemented yet, but all the new features that we added with 3.1 have been equally added to both Windows and Macs, so that is great. And nothing that I show you is going to be dramatically different if you are still using the old version. So let's get started. We're looking at the interface for Luminar 3. We're looking at the library module. And I have this open. I'm going to actually build one from scratch in a moment, but I wanted to have some images here so that I can walk you through and give you an idea of what the interface looks like and what the workflow is. So the nice thing about Luminar, it's very easy to attach images to your library. You'll be pointing to a folder, and Luminar scans that folder and pulls the JPEG out of the RAW, or uses the JPEG and very quickly creates the thumbnail. The nice thing is it does not move your files around, so your organizational structure on your hard drive stays great. Yet it is smart enough to know that if you've organized things within your hard drive, that it will respect that organization. So if you have subfolders and you've organized your image into subfolders and even into folders below that, it will keep that organization when it looks at those folders. So let me walk you through the interface. There's a few panels that we work with, and primarily you'll be working with the library panel, which we're looking at now, which is a great way to rate and organize images. And then there's also an edit panel where you'll get to work on an image. Now, as a matter of fact, what I have here are some before and after images that I've done with Luminar. This is the before, this is the after. I have it kind of backwards here. This is an after image, and this is a before. I think I probably should, not that I'm not building excitement already, but probably I can organize this by descending file name, so that way we can go from the before to the after. So you can get an idea of how you can enhance an image. So these were some images that I shot out in Sedona, and this is the before, kind of a gray sky. It was actually rain coming in, and I really liked it, but I used a very wide angle lens. You can see the distortion here. You can see nothing really popped in the clouds, and the trees are a little bit dark. So I ran it through Luminar and was able to do this with this image and really pull what I envisioned out of the original RAW file that I saw when I was there. Here's another example also from Sedona, and you can see we have everything is, for those who have had the opportunity to go out to that area, a lot of red clay. So it's really beautiful, and this is, again, the before, and taking advantage of just a few of our filters, I was able to bring this out. And I'll show you how we can execute that as we move forward. And there's another one, again, very gray sky. Didn't have the dynamic range that I wanted to capture both the nuance in the rock formation as well as the sky. So I kind of split the difference. But bringing this into Luminar, I was, again, able to really bring out what I saw there, or what I envisioned to be the photograph. This is kind of an interesting shot. This is one of those shots that you would consider lost. I grabbed it, and this is the original raw file, way underexposed. But if I process this, and it wasn't that hard to do, I can step through, and I was able to recover a lot of the detail and open that up and avoid getting any noise. So I was really happy that I was able to get this shot. I thought it was kind of cool with the layout and the framing, and it was very pensive. This was just a woman sitting there, and it just was that moment that you just really appreciate when you're walking around with your camera. And then we're back here again. Nice vast shot of the Grand Canyon. I like the fact that you had the scale here. You really can't tell scale of the Grand Canyon when you're looking at a photograph. It's really hard to appreciate, but luckily I had this rock climber in front of us. Don't know how he got there, don't know how he got down, but I appreciated the fact that he gave true scale to this rock here on the left and to the depth here. But again, it really didn't pop. It was one of those days where between haze and bright sunshine, it was not the best time of the day to shoot, but it was the time that I was there. But I was able to really process this image and bring out the colors and the nuance that were there. So this just gives you an idea of some of the things you can do with Luminar. Let me bring in some additional images just to show you the workflow. So we have these images here. I'm going to go back and step to the gallery view. I have a button up here on the upper left side. I can also, because it's the gallery image mode, use the shortcut of G for gallery. So I can look at my images, and I can look at these images in a variety of sizes depending on how big my monitor is and how much detail I want to see in these images. So if I went to small, I can see a lot more, and I can step through the different sizes, small, medium, large, and largest, which is really kind of nice. Let's bring some images into this catalog. And to bring images into the catalog, you go over to the right side of the interface, to the panel on the right, and next to the word folder, there's a little plus sign, and I click that, and now I'm ready to add any images or any folders of images that I want. So I have a variety of images here. I can go over here to travel photos, and you see I have a bunch of images inside my travel photos. I have this South Beach library that I could bring some things in. So it's a mix of RAW and JPEG. I'm going to click on the South Beach and bring in one of these. I just got a notification on my keyboard that it's running low on power. So if I need to break for a second and plug that in, I will. But let's hope that's not going to be the case. So I'm going to bring in the South Beach folder, and I'm simply going to click on Add Folder. And you'll notice that I have a new folder here on the right side. And these are the images, and I can start working with them and rating them. And I can organize these in a variety of ways. I can search and organize them by the time that I captured the image, when I edited them, or if I've rated these images, and we're going to look at that in a moment, I can sort them by if they're a pick or a rejected image, by a color label, or even a rating of 1 to 5 stars, as well as grouping them by file type and file size. So I have a lot of control for how I want to process my images. Now I want to bring in another set of images, and I'm going to click here on folders. And this time I'm going to go to this folder that says travel photos. And if I select that to bring that in, it's going to keep everything that's inside these folders in its own separate section because I've already organized these. I don't want to have to go back and organize them again, and Luminar allows me to do that. So I'll click on Add Folder. It's bringing in 12,574 images. Wow, there's a lot more in that folder than I thought, but you saw how quickly it brought this in. I'm going to make these into small thumbnails so I can see all of these images from all of these years. So it brought in all of my images, and I'm ready to start working with them. If I look over at the folder where it says Travel Photos, there's a little disclosure triangle. If I click on that, you can see there is all the folders that I had in my Finder level, and some of these even have subfolders, and I can search and see what's inside those folders. So if I want to look at my travel landscape, my others, I can go here. If I want to look at ones that I had processed, I have these. So it's really nice that the organizational structure is respected when I bring it in. And the other thing I hope you noticed is how quickly everything populated. And that's because all Luminar does is look at the images in that folder, doesn't have to move them, doesn't have to copy them, doesn't have to create any kind of a large thumbnail. It just works, and it works fast. And now I can start classifying and rating and editing my images right off the bat. So let's take a look at how I can rate and classify images. I was looking at this by file name, and the camera cycles around every 1,000 images, so there's a lot of redundant file names. So let me switch over to capture time. So I have each of these by their groupings of when I shot them. So, I can see all the ones from, the Getty Center at the same time and all of my Paris ones together. And if I really wanted to dig down, I could click on, say, Shanghai and look just at the images inside of that folder. And let's work with the Shanghai images. So the first thing I'm going to want to do when I bring in a folder, or I actually attach a folder to my library, is probably do a quick run through of how I want to be able to rate my images. And the first thing I like to do is choose ones that I consider picks, maybe reject some, and that way I can do a first pass. Stylistically, this is one way of doing it. I can also do this by giving it a rating of 1 to 5 stars. To do either of those, all I need to do is right click on an image, and I can go to set flag and I can choose if something is a favorite or a pick, or if I want to reject it, maybe it was out of focus or maybe the flash didn't pop. And then of course I can unmark something if I want to go back and think about it. But normally I wouldn't go and click and then go to the next one and click, which of course you can do. And if you like working with a mouse, that's great. As long as you are comfortable, you can use a mouse and right click. You can use drop down menus. You can also use keyboard shortcuts. So if I wanted to, I can simply select an image and hit the P key. Now that is a pick. I'll make these a little bit bigger. I'm going to make these one size bigger. And you'll notice when I make something a pick, this little heart solidifies and I have a visual representation that that's a pick. Now, maybe I want to go down and I want to reject an image. I'm going to reject this one that's a little bit green, though I probably could fix it. And the keyboard shortcut to reject something is simply an X. You usually cross something out when you don't want it anymore. And I hit that X, and you can see that there's an X here, and the image is actually grayed out. Let me do it with these two images because you can see they're very similar in exposure. I'll hit the X key, and you can easily see that this image is not rejected and this one is rejected. And of course, I can go back and click on the heart. And the nice thing is I don't have to simply click on an image and select it. I can rate an image. I'm going to rate this one with a pick, and then use my left and right arrow keys, and I can step through all of my images and very quickly rate them with a selection of a pick or a rejection. Additionally, you'll notice when I right-clicked that I have the option to set a rating of 1 to 5. So in this case, I could right-click and say, well, I like this one. It has potential. I'll make it a 3. Or if I wanted to, I could just hover my mouse over where the stars are on each of these images and choose a rating right there. So I can easily step through, rate these images very quickly with a click or with the numerical value of 1 through 5 on my keyboard as to the ones that I like. And this is great. Again, I can do this in a combination with my mouse and my keyboard, or if I wanted to, I could simply do this all with the keyboard and the left and right arrow keys. So that's the second way that you can mark or rate an image. And the third way is you can apply a color label. And if you've worked in Lightroom, and I know a lot of people have, we use all the same keyboard shortcuts. So if I wanted to, I could give these different colors a certain reason that I might do it. Maybe I'm doing daylight images where I'm going to work with the sky. Those could all be red. But anything that was shot at night, I might select those and make them yellow. And I'm just hitting the 7 key for night, and I was hitting the 6 key for red. Very easy to do. And maybe dusk, I'll make those, or the blue hour, I'll make those 8s. So they're green. Very easy to do. And the nice thing is, once I've done this, a couple of things are available to me and a couple of things have been added. The first thing is I can choose and sort which images I want to work with and I want to see. So I can click on showing and I can say, just show me the ones that were picks, that were my favorites. And when I do that, it will actually show me my favorites when I do that. And as a matter of fact, one of the things, I do have an earlier build of this. So, that's the challenge of working with the beta and demoing it. So you'll notice that I don't have that sort option, but it will come back as soon as I quit and reopen. And this is kind of a nice thing because I want to point out that Luminar is constantly backing up and saving your database. So when I open this up again, it's going to still have all of my ratings and all of my images. And one of the things that will be fixed when I restart it is now I can sort by, say, my favorites, or I can say, just show me the ones that I haven't marked yet so I can review those. And it's a very nice, quick way to sort through these images. Maybe I just want to see everything that's 3 stars or more, and I want to make them bigger. So I can easily sort through my images here. And then once I choose what I want to view, I can go back and I can reorganize how I want to view those. So maybe instead of sorting them by capture time, I want to sort them by their rating. So I'll click on rating, and now you'll see that I'm sorting by ratings. The 4s and the 3s are here. I'll go up to 2 or more, though I don't think I gave anything a 2. And I can either do that with a descending, where it's going from 4 to 3, which is I like, or ascending, where I can start with the lower ones. I'll go back to descending and just point out that maybe after looking at this a little bit bigger, I see a lot of potential in this image right here. I want that to be a 5. So I'm simply going to click on the 5 key, and it reorganizes and restructures that and puts that at the top of my list to start working with. In addition to what I have here, I can choose to say, I just want to look at my favorites. And once I'm looking at my favorites, I can further refine that to maybe images that I've rated red. So again, I guess I didn't rate anything red as a favorite. Let's see if I've done anything that's yellow. I did. So I have some yellow favorites here. And then, of course, I can further explore that by rating. I don't think I put ratings on here, so let me do that very quickly. We'll give this a 3. We'll give this a 5 because I love panoramas. We'll give this a 2. And you'll notice because I'm sorting by rating, it's actually immediately reorganizing my images. We'll call this a 1. And though this is probably not a 5, I'm going to give it a 5, and it gets placed towards the top. So being able to organize and find things is great. So now we have kind of our handle on that. We're ready to look at how we can further organize our images, and then we'll look at processing some images. So culling through your images is very easy. I'm looking specifically at my Shanghai images, but if I want to go back and sort all of my images, I could click on travel photos. I'm going to change it from largest to smallest. I'm going to organize this by capture time once again, so I'm grouping an area, and I can go through and do the same thing, giving this a 5, giving this a 3, 3, 5, 5. I'm not even going to do favorites, just whipping through this. I think I might work with this image today. Let's see some other ones. You know, I kind of like some of these Paris images. Maybe we'll correct that one, as well as, you know, we'll look at some of these transfer images. I like I'm going to open up and give 5s to all the befores, so I'll be able to easily find those and work on them. Love this one because it's so bad. And if I wanted to, I can, instead of looking at each individual one, go up here, all my photos in my library, and now I know all the 5s that I want to work with. So that's actually great. Now, once I've done this, I'm ready to start editing. So I'll take an image here, and this is a nice one to work with because it's going to show off our new Axon Ai 2.0 feature. So whenever I want to work with a picture, I can simply select it, brings it full screen, and then go over and switch to my edit panel. And now once I'm in my edit panel, I see my image. I had made it full screen, but I have a right panel here that I had closed because I was looking at everything full screen. And I can click on this drop down and change how I view my images on my computer. So for instance, I want the side panel because I do want to work on actually adding some of the filters. But some of the nice features that I have is a film strip option, which allows me to view a small thumbnail to the left. And this way I don't have to hop back and forth between my library and my edit panel. I can simply click on an image and know that I can work on that image there. So that's really a nice feature. And another feature that we have in this dropdown is our current photo actions. And what that does is it will put at the bottom of my image any ratings I might have, if it's a favorite, or I can make it a favorite, as well as if I wanted to apply any kind of a color label. as well as the name of the image. So I have this image to work with here. To the right of that drop down is another button. And what this button reveals are our Luminar looks. Now, Luminar ships with a variety of looks already installed. As a matter of fact, it is these first 8 looks here in this drop down. The rest of the looks that I have here were looks that I was able to download for free off of our website. And we are constantly releasing looks. And looks are basically presets on adrenaline. And I'll explore that in just a moment. So if you want to get additional looks, they're really easy. You would scroll down to the bottom and say get more. We have a whole mess of free ones. We also have some that were created by some world-class photographers on their specific style that are for sale. So if you want to have a specific look of one of our photographers, you can easily do that with one click. So if I wanted to process this with one click, and I'm going to switch back to one of the default ones right up here at the very top, just to the essential looks to show you how it works. And so that we're not distracted on the left side by these images, I will go and drop down and close the film strip. And to give us a little more real estate, I'm also going to close current photo actions. Now I'm ready to start working with these looks. And looks can be one-click solutions, or they can be a starting point. If I click on any look, I want you to see what happens on the right side of my interface, where I have a bunch of filters listed. Those are going to change, and you'll notice that the sliders have been adjusted to give this image the look that I'm clicking on. You'll also notice that at the bottom of my screen, all of the looks have a thumbnail indicating what the image will look like when I apply that look. So here's one of just an image enhancer. I click on it, it automatically opens the develop module, opens up the shadows, recovers highlights. It has a little bit of vibrance. It uses our Axon AI 2.0 and our sky enhancer. So you notice that the sky just really popped. This was the before, this is the after. I can also look at that as a side by side. These buttons are on the upper right side of the interface, so I can see the before and after. But there are times when I apply a look, I may go, you know what, it's a little bit too much. I like it, but it's too much. So with every look, I have the option to blend that look back with the original image to kind of compromise and get the image that I want. Because of course, every starting image is unique, however you expose it, whatever's in the image. So you may want to dial that back. But you're not limited to dialing back just how strong a look is when it's applied to a picture. All of the sliders here on the right are also adjustable. So this is where I say it's truly a starting point. I may like what it's done, but I think, you know what? I'm going to pull down the saturation a little bit. That red is just popping too much. Okay. Or maybe it did too much of enhancement to the sky and I want to bring it down. Or perhaps because I've reduced saturation, I can now really pop my sky and it doesn't look as oversaturated. Now, the nice thing about the AI Sky Enhancer is that it's smart enhancement. So what we've done is we've compared tens of thousands of images and had photographers process the befores to and after, and then using machine learning, learned how a photographer might process this sunset or might process a sky. And the AI Sky Enhancer filter works with any sky from blue hour to blue hour. That's the time right before sunrise, through sunrise, midday, sunset, and a little bit after. So it recognizes the different skies and adjusts them appropriately. So if you have a blue sky, it's not going to make it golden. It's going to bring out the blue and enhance the clouds. If you're working with sunset, like this image, it's going to work on bringing out the yellows and the orange and the reds, depending on what's already there. And it recognizes what are clouds. And the other thing it recognizes is what is not sky or cloud. So you notice it did not affect the water at all. And it's really good at differentiating that. The Axon AI filter is a quick fix slider that just makes your image better. We're going to work with that by itself from scratch. So I'll show you how that works. So I can very quickly take advantage of all these processing tools. There's my before, there's my after. I really like it. But again, I can adjust all of these to my liking. And I can also, if I wanted to, add additional filters. And we have over 50 filters that you can work with. And some of these are just nice, quick solutions. Put it on, move a slider, real basic stuff. And others are a lot more in depth. So if you just want to do something quick and easy, you can do that. And we broke it up into our essential groups, problem or issue fixers, creative filters if you wanted, some of the more advanced professional ones. So if you're used to working in Lightroom and Photoshop and you like their HSL, we have HSL and LUT mapping, so you don't have to step into another program to achieve a lot of what you're achieving, and you can do it quickly. And being able to have a lot of control and being able to do it fast is really one of our goals. And then we have utility. So if I wanted to, maybe I just want to add a vignette to this image. Basic thing we always do, I click on vignette. You see it's applied to the bottom of the workflow. I can then apply the vignette. I'm darkening the outer area. What I like to do when I'm working with a vignette is bring it all the way down, bring my feather all the way down. Then I can see exactly the shape of that vignette. And now I know that I want it to be this round. I can click on a place center button. And if I click on place center, I can move that vignette exactly where I want it to be. So I'm centering it over her, and that's important. Now I'll dial it back because obviously this is more of a telescope image or a periscope if you're in a submarine. I don't know why I went there. But anyways, you don't want necessarily that. So I'm going to make it a little bit less intense and move that feather all the way up. And then maybe I might scale it down a little bit. So this is without, and it's subtle, and a vignette should be subtle, but it's making the sky richer. And if I wanted to, I can even add a little bit of inner light to really bring her out of the image. So with just a few sliders and a few clicks, I was able to really focus my viewer's eyes. And I think the final thing I want to do is just show you on this image, is show you one of the more advanced features, which is the HSL or hue, saturation, and luminance sliders. And what's nice about this, I'm clicking this to bring it on, I can work with these different 8 shades or these different 8 hues and control them, their hue, their saturation, and the luminance values. So in the case of the red, I don't want it to be as saturated, and I can bring that down so it doesn't pop and doesn't drag my viewers' eyes to the shirt, because I want them to look at the person, not necessarily be distracted by a really bright red object. In addition, I could say, I like a little more orange in my image. That's going to grab some of the orange from my sunset and bring that up and making that a little bit more intense. And if I want to switch the hue, I'll do it on the red because that's going to make the most difference. I can bring that over so it's more towards a purple or a magenta, or I can drag it to the right and it brings it over to the orange. And I can do this with any color. So for instance, if I liked my yellow sky, but I wanted it to be a little more orange, look how easily I can affect that sunset by adjusting the hue, as well as going into the luminance values. And now I can bring down my yellow's luminance, making the sky a little bit darker if I wanted to. I'm going to do that here and easily work with my image. Again, this is a few sliders. I actually see what's happening on and off. I can toggle any filter on and off very easily with the eyeball to the right. I can delete a filter if I don't like it. And of course, all filters can be reset. So it gives me a lot of control here. And we saw at the very top, I can turn on and off the filter for the entire image. So I can always see where I've come from. And I can go split screen. And sometimes that is nice when you're comparing your images. So I'm really happy with this image. I think it's really nice. And I want to work on some other images and show you some other features and revisit some of the features that we've already looked at. So I'll go over here to the upper left corner of the interface and click on Gallery Images Mode. And this takes me back to all of my 5-star images to work with. I want to show you how well that Axon Ai 2.0 filter and the Sky filter works on an image without putting it into a quick fix of a look. So I'll double click to click on that or to select it. You'll notice that my thumbnails do populate. I could start here, but what I want to do is I want to start with a clean slate because I want to show you some of your options. So when you open any image, on the right side, you'll see a workspace. This is the quick and awesome workspace. I'm going to step out of it to show you, a starting blank workspace. So this is out of the box. And when you open an image, nothing is there. And you can simply click on Add Filter and bring in any filters you want. So for this one, I'll probably bring in the Axon Ai filter by double clicking on it. The AI Sky Enhancer filter, I like that. I'll probably work maybe with my foliage a little bit. So I'll bring in the Foliage Enhancer. And these are all artificially intelligent filters or image aware filters. And by image aware, it knows what's green and what color foliage is, so it only affects that part of the image. And maybe I want to bring in a little more detail. I want it to feel a little sharper. And probably that's a good place to start. And if I want to add some more things, it's very easy to do. Let me close that Add Filter button so we can see this image full screen. As a matter of fact, I'll make it even bigger by closing my Looks panel. So the first thing I'm going to do is apply my Axon AI filter. Now what the Axon AI filter does is it very quickly tones your image. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to make it easy to do what you would normally do in a raw developed filter. I'm going to add that filter so you can see what's in that filter. And I could have used this, but I always like starting with the Axon AI filter. So I have this image to start with, and this is a JPEG that I grabbed. I actually have the RAW, but I want to work on the JPEG because it's always harder to work with the JPEG, and I want you to see how much I can improve this image. So normally when you fix this image, you would play with the exposure, you might open up the highlights to reveal some detail, you might pull the highlights down to, recover the sky, but open up your shadows, work with a little clarity. So you might play with all of these, but the Axon AI filter does it for you. It recognizes different parts of the image. So it recognizes the sky, mountains, grass, what's dark, what's light, and gets as much as it can out of the image by just moving one slider to the right. And you'll notice by doing this very quickly, I'm going to move it left and right again, it really makes the image pop. I see a lot more detail in the red, in the clay of the mountains. My sky is more pronounced. The green really pops. It just gives me an image that has much better tonality. And I can always tweak this to my taste. I'm going to now work with the sky enhancer. And the sky is pretty good already, but let's take a look and see what it can do. And you'll notice it brings out the blue in the sky, but doesn't make the clouds blue. And it doesn't make it all crunchy. It just enhances what's naturally there. And you can see it's really nice edges. If I go to 100%, this is really, really clean. And this is just a small JPEG image that I'm working with. So I like that. I think my trees are a little too green. They're a little too bright. So I have this foliage enhancer. And of course, if I move it to the right, you'll notice it makes them even more fluorescent. Not what I want to do, but all I have to do is go to the next slider and dial down the green more into the yellows, and I start seeing more of what I want in my trees. So I can very easily tweak my foliage, and it's only affecting those shades that trees are. So this is getting really nice very quickly. I want this to really pop. I want some details here. And instead of using structure, which we have, I'm going to use the detail enhancer because it allows me to just enhance my small details if I want, medium details, or larger details. I'm going to zoom into 100%. All I had to do was click. And I'm going to enhance my smaller details and my medium details, and I can start seeing that this image is feeling crisper, even though it's a really compressed JPEG. And instead of making my large images have more details, I'm going to move that to the left, and that's going to protect the clouds a little bit. So this is the after, and this will be the before. And you'll notice it's just looking crisper, but the clouds aren't getting out of control. Let's take a look at the before on this image. That was what came out of my camera. A nice image, but this one really pops. And if I want to dial this back a little bit, if I do think it's a little bit too green or too vibrant, I have a lot of options. I have these 50 images, these 50 filters to work with, 50 plus filters. So I could go in and I could grab the saturation and vibrance filter and pull down the vibrance. Now, the way saturation works is really broad. If an image is already saturated and you move it to the right, everything gets saturated. If you move it to the left, everything gets equally desaturated. Vibrance is smart saturation. So if I move it to the right, it's only going to saturate the more muted colors. And if I move it to the left, it's only going to desaturate the more saturated colors. So it's pretty subtle, but I can really dial back how truly sharp those trees are and truly green they are, not necessarily how sharp they are. So I really like what I have going here. And what I might want to do is add another filter. I'm going to add that Hsl because I like, actually, matter of fact, we've seen the Hsl. So instead of that, let's go ahead and try some of the other filters. I want this to have more of an late afternoon feel. So I can go to my creative and add the golden hour filter and bring that up. And again, a little bit goes a long way. And you'll notice here that when I move that amount up, that these mountains are really starting to take on the tone that I saw. It's affecting the green. I'm going to have to work with this. I'm going to show you a couple ways we can do that. And I can also control the saturation of what it's doing. So I like what it's doing to the mountains. And I have two ways to attack my green issue. First of all, I could play with the Foliage Enhancer or the amount, but it's not necessarily, I bring the amount down. It's not necessarily doing what I want. So I can do one of two things. If I wanted to, I could apply just the golden hour effect to the mountains. And to do that, I can paint in a mask. So you'll notice next to the word golden hour, on the right, I have a little brush with a drop down. If I click on that brush, I'm now in my masking mode, and this upper left area has been updated, and I can choose to either paint or erase just this filter. Now, of course, it's completely 100% painted in, but I'm going to zoom in to 100% and just start painting. You'll notice as soon as I started painting in, it resets to where the filter is not even being affected. So I can paint in just any effect, and there is the ability with every single filter to mask in or mask out that filter so you can have a lot of control. Now I can pretty easily see what I've applied this filter to, but if I want to really get into a lot of detail and work with this, I may want to see what my mask looks like. And I can go to the upper left-hand corner where the word mask is, and to the right there's a little eye. And if I click on that, it turns on the rubylith or the overlay of where I'm painting in this filter, which is just my golden hour filter. And I'm going to just do it on the foreground and go over here. I probably would do it at 100%. If I overshoot, maybe get a little bit more of the trees, I don't want to do that. I can switch to the erase function and make it smaller. And I can easily change the size of my brush, bigger or smaller. I can also do that with the left and right bracket keys. So if you're used to that in Photoshop or Lightroom, you can do that. I can change it from a harder brush to a softer brush, and also the opacity of how I paint things in so I can be a little more subtle. I have it as the erase. I'm going to go through. Let me make this, just see there, get a little bit of the trees out of the way, and turn off my overlay or turn off my masking feature by clicking back on the brush. And now this is the after, and that's the before, and I was able to bring out the redness in the mountain. And I'm really happy with that. It allowed me to very quickly modify this image. If the greens were still too green, you can do exactly what I did before, get that Hsl filter. Instead of searching for it, I'm going to go to the very top of my filter catalog, type in Hsl, and it takes me right to that filter. That's great, nice and easy. And I'll just take the saturation of my green down a little bit. That looks a little more natural to me, more realistic, and maybe I want it to be a little drier feeling. So I'll move my hue from green more towards the yellow range. If you move it to the left, it basically changes the hue to the color above it. If you move a slider to the right, it changes that color or the hue of that color to the color below it. So that's a quick way that you can use this to fix what you want. I like the way this is working. This is my before, this is my after. Pretty awesome. Let's go back to our library. Click on library. I can hit G for gallery, or I can simply go ahead and press that button. This is the image I just worked on. So that's really kind of nice. This is the one that I had worked on before that I showed you the before and after. But if I wanted to, I could apply these settings, and it might not necessarily work on this image just because they were shot at different times, but I can right click and copy all those adjustments from one image to another image. If I wanted to, I could even select a bunch of other images by holding down the Command or the Control key, depending if you're Mac or PC. Not sure exactly how well this will work because these aren't really the same time of day. But if I select a main image and then the images I want to modify, I can right click, go to adjustments and say sync adjustments, and it's going to progressively add all those adjustments to these images. And if I like it, I'm good to go. But the nice thing is, let's step into this image here. It applied a bunch. If I switch over to the edit mode, give it a chance to catch up, it applied all my filters and the sliders the way I wanted it to. There's my before, there's my after. It's getting there. It's a nice start. But because every image is custom, when I apply a copy paste, I can still modify these. I can remove filters, I can move the sliders, and I can add additional filters to really make this image pop. And I like what it's doing. I think this one could use a little more vibrance, where I dialed it down before for the trees. I think I could also cheat with my golden hour and bring that up, but you'll notice my mask is still here. So all I need to do is select that and fill that mask in. Now it's really making this pop, and I can see there with, this golden hour, I'm going to want to dial it back. Where did I just move my golden hour? There we go. So I'm going to bring that back here. Like what it's doing. It appears to be a little crooked. I think part of that is the mountains. But what I want to do with this image is I want to crop it. So I'm going to go to the toolbar and click on crop. When I click on crop, I get my, 9 or my 3x3 display, so I can see, rule of thirds. And it's very easy for me to crop it to a preset size. So if I want it to be 1x1 for Instagram, I could easily do that. If I wanted it to be a cover photo for Facebook, I don't have to remember what the aspect ratio is. I can very easily do that. And of course, if it feels a little crooked, I can go up here to angle, and I could just dial that angle in. So even though, it probably was straight, it gives the appearance of being a little crooked, I'm going to go ahead and cheat here. And I like the idea of doing this as a Facebook image. It gives me kind of perspective. This is really good, though. I have a bad feeling that this is my face. My individual shot's going to cover up this guy. So take a look up here. I can easily flip this left, right, or rotate. I'll flip it left. So now I have plenty of empty space here when I put it on Facebook, and I'll click on done. And I'm close to where I want to be. But since I copied and pasted a lot of things, such as that detail enhancer, it enhanced my sky too much, and it's starting to look a little bit crunchy, especially because it's a JPEG. I'm really pushing it. So I don't necessarily want to add as much of the details to this top part, but I do like it in the mountain. I'll look at the before, I'll look at the after. I do want my mountains a little bit sharp. So all I need to do is take this details enhancer, and this time I'm going to create a mask, but instead of brushing it in, I can use a gradient mask, which is perfect for skies. I click on that, and this is going to allow me to transition from the more detailed areas to the less detailed areas. Now, my mouse skills aren't really that great. You can see it's hard for me to move a mouse, but I'm going to go ahead, bring this down, and that's my threshold. So this will be nice and smooth. And I'm going to show you what happens if I really push it. Okay, you can see the details is working on the bottom. If I go ahead and click on the mask, I can see my ruby lith. And the nice thing is, if this could be a great starting point, but if I wanted to, I could now, after I created this gradient, start painting in a little more here. And maybe I wanted to paint out or erase a little bit over here where it got into the clouds because I don't want it to affect it. So now none of those excessive details are being applied to the sky, only to the mountain. Let me turn that off. So now I have my mountain working and I have my details going here, but it would be great if I could soften the sky a little bit more. And this is a great little trick. Any of our filters can be put on 2, 3 more times if you need. So all I'm going to do here is duplicate my detail enhancer. It duplicates it with the mask. But here's the trick. I can go to the mask drop down. Gotta click it on the right point. That's my there we go. Go to mask, and I can invert the mask. So now it's only being applied to the clouds. And instead of moving my sliders for details to the right, I move them all to the left. So what's happening with this filter is I think I did that upside down. Good thing is, unlimited undos, as a matter of fact, maybe we'll call it an intentional mistake. If I go to this little drop down in the upper right-hand corner, I can see the history of everything I've done to this image. From the original to the sync to all the modifications, I can step back to any point in time, and even if I've quit my library, I can do that. And as you can see, I've really trashed this image. So let's go back to where we inverted the mask, and that's a good point. And I needed to work with the correct image, which is, this is working on the bottom. So we'll go back here. I'm going to invert the mask. So now I'm working with the top part of the image on the right detail enhancer, and I can slide this over to the left. I'm being pretty aggressive here. I probably wouldn't be this aggressive, but it's now going to put some nice softness in my sky, which I really like. And I'm going to finish this with just one more filter, the adjustable gradient filter. As you can see, I clicked over to add a filter. I only see HSL. That's because HSL is in this top part right here. So I will erase HSL and go down here and choose adjustable gradient. And this works like an adjustable gradient that you might already be familiar with. The nice thing is I can set my orientation. I can click on that button and say, well, where do I want the top and bottom to be? And how gradual do I want that gradient to happen? I think that's kind of a good starting point. And now I can take the top and bring down the exposure a little bit. I think it's a little bit blue, so maybe I'll warm that up and bring the vibrance down. So the sky looks a little bit more natural. And, contrast would probably not be a good thing here. I think it makes it too crunchy, so I'll smooth out the contrast. And then I can switch over to the bottom and maybe, again, bring down my exposure. That's going to make my colors look deeper. I don't think I need to add vibrance, but it's nice that I can play with that. And then again, contrast less and more. And in the case of this, I really do want it to pop. And maybe we'll warm it up a little bit. So I like the way this is going. Maybe I'll pull down my vibrance just a little bit. And there we are with our after, and that was the before image. So you can see, you can take a nice regular image and very easily take it through Luminar and really make it pop, and you have a lot of controls. Let's step back to the library for a moment. I want to just point out a couple of more things that we can do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do something with this image just to show you how it works. In addition to cropping, so I'll need to go back over to edit, I could also clone and stamp or erase items from my image. So let's see what happens if I needed to move this guy, because the Park Services bought this shot, but they're like, nobody can be on that mountain. So I can go over to the tools, and you'll notice here where we found crop, there's also clone and stamp and erase. And depending on the image, one style might work better than the others. If it's really complex areas around it, a lot of times clone and stamp is better. You can choose what you want to grab for your source. But I'm going to try the erase, so I switch over to the erase tool, clicked on that. It's now going to make a stamped version of this image. And I have my little circle here, and I can make it bigger and smaller with the left and right bracket keys, or once again, up on the top, I could have my brush, or I could even lasso this. And I'm just going to, paint over this guy. And I'll make my brush bigger and smaller and softer. And there we go, get him painted. Just want to stay nice and close. And what Luminar is going to do, and I do want to make sure I get all the way outside his body, is it will look at the surrounding pixels and make the best guess to erase that. I'll click this erase button right here. We'll see if that works. It's a semi-complex background, but actually it did a pretty good job. And if I zoom all the way back, if you didn't know that I did that, you might not notice it. But I don't necessarily want to do that. I'm going to click Done and Undo. And I'm going to show you how the clone and stamp works, because that might be a little bit better when working with the image. So again, remember we have unlimited undos, and it remembers these even if you close the application. I'm going to switch again back over to now the clone and erase tool. It brings up a similar interface. I'm going to zoom in once it's ready. But what I can do with this is I can set the source of my image. I'm going to press down the space key so I can pan across it. That's one of the features. And I can choose what I want to use to paint over him. So I'll click right here. And then if I wanted to, I could start painting. And a lot of times I do that directly out of the box and it works great. Sometimes what I like to do is take the opacity down to say 50%, 60%. And now I can paint over it, but then I can choose different areas by holding down the Option or the Alt key and continue to paint them out with, different levels of opacity. And you can see this is much more subtle. And when I zoom out, none will be the wiser that there was a person standing here. So I'm getting that. And then when we get maybe down to the legs, I'll go here and I'll take that maybe to 100% so I can be a little bit more precise. There we go. And we're just cloning and stamping that over so we don't have that. And as you can see, it looks pretty good here zoomed in, but unless you're looking for it, you'll never know that there was a person standing here. Maybe it's another photographer taking a picture with their tripod, last thing you want. So being able to easily erase or clone and stamp, you can do that. It's on its own layer, so if I need it to go back, I can turn off that layer. There he is, there he's gone, there he is, there he's gone. And it's a lot of fun to do that. I wanted to step back into the library and then we'll take some questions. I want to show you two more things in reference to working with images. If I go to the full library, one of the things I can do now, I pointed to a bunch of images here and I gave them, ratings and favorites and colors, but sometimes I want to group them by what's in the shot. I want to maybe take a look at these Paris shots here, and I want maybe all the images of people to be grouped together. So what I can do is I can select these, and I'll select one and then hold down the Command key, or on Windows, it's the Control key, and select all my images that I might have with people here. So these are all being selected. Nice variations, and I'll intentionally miss one. So I've selected all my people, and now I'm going to go over this area called Albums and click on the plus key. And what Luminar will do is it will make an album of just those images that I can quickly get to. So those are my people. And I can work with these and organize these. If I wanted to, I can go back to the Paris ones for the ones that I missed. I know I missed this one here. And all I have to do is drop it right onto the people folder. There's two people, drop that on. So once I build it, I can still add to it and remove images, but it's a great way to organize things. And it doesn't duplicate images. It works just like a playlist in your music library. So you might have a song, and that song might be by, let's say, John Lennon. And that could go into music in the 60s. It could go into a playlist of John Lennon or a playlist of the Beatles. Well, you still only have one version, but it's easier to find what you're looking for. So these are really nice features to be able to further organize your images. Another thing in reference to organization is this upper left area here. I'm going to click on this drop down, and there are three things that we're going to point out. The middle one we've already looked at. That's add folder. And all it does is point to a folder and doesn't move anything. But there are times that you may want to move images off an external drive, or you may want to move them off a camera card. And in that case, you can use import images. And again, it will give you this option of, choosing something from your, say, your desktop. And I will go and I'm going to move some images in from one of my other libraries. And maybe we'll go to this West Clift and we'll have some images there. Those are the video ones that Sony creates. So it's in my this folder here. I can dig down. So there I have all of my images. I think my raw images are in here. And I can simply grab any images I want. Okay, and I can, on the Mac, I'm just hitting the space bar. I can see what that image looks like. So I'll go ahead, select these. And this is the key thing. When I want to move them, I have some choices about what Luminar will do in reference to the original image and its location. So first, I can say where I want to move it to. So I'm going to move it instead of to Paris, I'm going to move it to Travels and Landscapes. So it'll go into that folder. And then I can choose if I wanted to copy that image into that folder. So it makes another copy, doesn't relocate it from my original hard drive or folder. Or I can choose to move the images if I don't want to create redundant images. So I have a choice here. I'm going to copy the image. I like that. And then I can choose to organize them right at the top level of that folder or any subfolder I want. Or I can have it, put it in subfolders and sort them by year and month or year, month, and day. I have a lot of options here. And then, of course, the include subfolders, because you're probably curious what that does. If there were folders inside the folder that I'm copying or moving, it will, if I have this checked, will look and dig through those lower level photos. But I just want to copy them into one folder. I'm going to click on import. And it's done. It's made a copy that's moved in. So if I click on Travel and Landscape, I have those two images here that I stitched together, and I can start working with them just like I can work with any image. And this one's pretty nice out of the box, but I'm going to take a quick peek. I'm going to open up my looks. And, we only looked at the image enhancer, but, maybe I want to try haze removal and what that does to an image. So I can do this without jumping over to the edit area. I can try, soft and airy. I can try sky enhancer. All will give me different effects. And then again, I have all of these other ones to work with. Maybe I want to go to landscape, and then I want to choose deep sky or dramatic landscape. And then I can take what I have there and tweak it. The last thing I want to show you is now you've processed your images, how do you export them? Well, I can go up here to the upper right-hand side to my share menu and click on that. I can also get this under File and Edit over here. Same thing, export. There's also the option to open it in other applications. So if I wanted to, I could send it to our sister product, Aurora. I could send it to Photoshop or Elements or Lightroom. If you're on a Mac, you can also send it to Photos and keep it there so it can sync with your phone. But what I want to do is I want to export this. I'll click Export. It gives me a dialog box. And in this dialog box, I can choose where I want to put it. If I want, I can save it right to my desktop, easy to find. And then I can go ahead and choose what format. So in this case, it's JPEG, so I can control how compressed it is. I can also switch to a variety of other different formats. So maybe I want to export a TIFF for printing. And in this case, I can export an 8 or a 16-bit image. I recommend 16-bit. And I can choose if I need to compress it or not. I can also choose the resolution. So if I'm going to print, I'm going to do it 300 dpi. And I can also choose the color space if I need to. sRGB is great to go to the web. And finally, I can change its size if I choose to. It will now go out at its original size, which is 5,000 by 2,500. But if I wanted to put out maybe a smaller version for somebody to review, I could change that long edge from 5,000 to say 2,000. And now I click on Save, and it will export a nice TIFF file at a resolution of 2,000 by whatever is appropriate to keep that ratio. I can move over here to my desktop. There is my TIFF file of what I exported, and I was able to very quickly process this image, and I might have tweaked it a little bit more, but that should give you a good sense of how you can use Luminar and what Luminar can do for you. Now with that, I'm going to pass it and ask Lori if there's any questions. I know we've gone for a good solid hour, but if there are any questions, we'll take those. And also, actually, before we do questions, let me have Lori point you to a couple of places on the web where you can find more training, where you can download a trial copy to work with. So Lori, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, we're at the Skylum.com website, and this is where you can find more information about Luminar, our other sister program, Aurora HDR. We also have Air Magic, but we're going to concentrate on Luminar right now since that is what Abba just demonstrated. We have two programs. There's a Luminar 3 and a Luminar Flex plugin. This is one of our newer programs. But let's suppose you wanted to download a free trial of Luminar 3. You can go ahead and click on here. This will give you, I believe it's 60-day free trial. Correct me if I'm wrong, Abba, but I believe that's
I do think it's now a 60-day free trial.
Yeah, so that's great. And if you decide you want it, you can go ahead and purchase it. In fact, I think the purchase price is around $70, I believe. There's also a couple questions that we had about some suggested features, or they wanted to know what was coming up. There is a roadmap. So again, under the Luminar menu here, just click on roadmap, and this will show you, this is our update that's going to be coming out shortly. What we have in development and what's planned for this year for both Mac, Windows, and for the cloud. So if you have some questions about that, you might want to check it out. Also, we'd ask if you have some recommendations or suggestions to contact our support department because they are collecting feature requests. So just go ahead and email support@skylum.com. If you have an account with us, this will actually give you quick access to any of your software licenses, or you can download your product, but you can also contact Skylum here. If you just click on this, you can fill out the form, choose your request categories, etc. All right, some other things about Luminar that might be beneficial for you folks. One of them is a marketplace. If you have a Luminar or you're playing around with the free trial, there's the marketplace, which allows you to download either paid for looks or free looks. So if we click over here on looks, you'll see that some of them You pay maybe $10 for a collection of looks or some freebies. I would like to personally recommend this one here. It's Tonality Mega Black and White Pack. If you're into black and white, this is a huge selection of beautiful looks that Richard Harrington put together, who is a product manager actually for Luminar Flex here and Luminar. So you might want to check that out. You can just download that one for free. And if you like those, there's some other premium ones there as well. We offer LUTs, which are lookup tables. There's some ebooks, overlays, workspaces, and textures. So do check out the marketplace. A couple more places I think might be beneficial is the user guide. If you have any questions, maybe about a particular filter, installation, catalogs, etc., go ahead and look at our user guide, and that goes into deep detail into all the different features. And then let's see here, we've got some videos, and we also have YouTube channel. So I'd encourage you to go to the Explore section under the YouTube channel. This is where we post all of our videos, and for any upcoming webinars, if you want to join us again, there are the webinars. Got a couple questions. One, Charles was asking, does the actual raw image have to be online when editing the image?
Yeah, so one of the things that if images are offline, you're really looking at a thumbnail, a smaller version of it. So you can still rate and organize, you can still rate and put them into albums, add key colors to it, but you won't be able to edit the image if it's not accessible, because Luminar doesn't create one of those very large files. As a matter of fact, our catalogs are very, very small because it's just the math that is used to process an image, and the images are maintained in their original location.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you for asking us to present Luminar. Thank you, Abba, for the presentation, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Take care. Good night.
Good night.